Hello, Pastor Rusty, Calvary Baptist Church, Frankfort, Kentucky. And I'm getting ready to do a Bible study for you for this evening. I'm going to record it earlier and then upload it this evening. So hopefully, if everything works right, it'll go live at 6:30. I also want to make a couple announcements. Remember that this coming Saturday, we'll do a drive-by celebration of Nettie's 100th birthday. If you need more information about that, on our private prayer page on Facebook, I have posted the information. If not, you can direct message me at Calvary Baptist Church on Facebook or Rusty Fitzpatrick on Facebook, and I can give you more information. If you can't make the drive-by, please drop a card in the mail. I mean, how often do you know somebody that reaches 100 years old? So do this in celebration of the centennial birthday of Nettie, and may God bless her and keep her and her family. Also, coming this Sunday, the plan is to be back in service, in-person service at the church. But now we have an issue. We have extremely cold weather coming in, and we may have the possibility of snow and ice, and we don't have any snow removal set up for the year because, well, we're not there. So there may be some changes according to that. Hopefully by tomorrow we'll know the weather well enough to decide whether we're going to be in person or not. We don't want to put anybody at risk. Just so that we can be back in the house of worship. We would rather do it live and everybody stay safe. So stay tuned for that. And if we do decide to not meet, please let those know who do not have Facebook or do social networking so that they can be aware of these changes. Well, let's get into a Bible study. We've been looking at odd things in the Scripture, just kind of weird stories that stick out. And I've got a good one for you today. First of all, we're going to be in Judges chapter 4. And the name of this message, the name of this study, the name of this will be how do you like your steak? Do you like your steak bloody? Well, considering this, let's look at what the Bible has to say in Judges chapter 4. In Judges chapter 4 it says, the Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. So the Lord sold them into the hand of King Jabin of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth HaGoim. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help, and for he had 900 chariots of iron and had oppressed the Israelites cruelly for 20 years. So we got a story about a guy who was just absolutely cruel. I mean, the Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and God gave them over into a hand of an oppressor, which is the cycle in Judges. And then he would send a deliverer, and we know those as the judges. And, you know, Samson was one of them. We've looked at a few of these stories. And they're very powerful stories, and there's a lot in them. But we're going to look at one today that's even a little bit more odd. So, at that time, there was a prophetess. Yes, I said prophetess in the land. Her name was Deborah. Verse 4 says in Judges 4, says, at that time Deborah, a prophetess, a wife of Lapidoth, was judging in Israel. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites came up to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak, son of Abinoam from Kadesh and Naphtali, and said to him, the Lord God of Israel commands you, go take position at Mount Tabor, bring 10,000 from the tribe of Naphtali and the tribe of Zebulun. I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the Wadi Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand. So we have Deborah, who's a prophetess. Now, that may mess with a few of his theology, but you'll get over it if you'll let the Lord speak to you. So Deborah has been told by God, she's a prophetess, and she's been told by God that this is the time when Sisera is going to be oppressed, because God, his people, Israel, had cried out, and they had repented of their sins and cried out for salvation. So, okay, God says, okay, now let's step in. So he tells this prophetess, Deborah, to let everybody know this. This is what's happening. Go get Barak, who's a general, and tell him this is the time when this guy with his 900 iron chariots is going to be given into your hand. Well, as the story goes with Deborah, that, well, he was afraid to go. He said, I won't go unless you go with me. But if you'll go with me, then I'll go. And she said, okay, I want to let you know something. I'll go with you, but you're going to miss out on the glory. She said in verse 9, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. That's an interesting statement, isn't it? The times in the land were extremely patriarchal at the time. And so for a male general to give up his glory so that a woman could have his glory, and all through my life I thought, well, Deborah got the glory, and there's a song that we'll look at a little bit later that's concerning Deborah. But that's not actually how this story goes. This story has an interesting ending to it. So they got up there, and they go to battle, and the Lord confuses all the charioteers of Sisera's army, and all the chariots were overtaken by these people of Naphtali and Ephraim. And as they're attacking them, Sisera actually jumps out of his chariot, and he's scared to death. And he runs looking for a place to hide. Now, at that time, there was a Kenite, a guy named Heber. And Heber, now the Kenites were kind of mixed into the land of Israel at that time. And the Lord had thrown out like the Amalekites, but he told them not to touch the Kenites. And he let the Kenites get out of the land. By and large, they were pretty good people. But Barak, who was very, very friendly with the king of the Canaanites, had pitched his tent closer to where the battle was at, and he actually sided. He had an alliance with the Canaanites, and so he was kind of a protector of the Canaanites, which is not a good place to be if you're going to be in the land of Israel at that time. So he had separated from the other Kenites, and so he was up there encamped as far away, now listen to this name, as far away as Elon Bezayon. What a name, right? I love that. I'm not good with these Hebrew pronunciations. When Sisera was told that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera called out all his chariots, all 900 of them. They go up to battle. He's thinking, okay, we got support from this Kenite. We're going to go up to battle. The Lord confuses all the chariots, and everything just blows apart for Sisera. Everything blows apart for the king of the Canaanites as well. And so Sisera jumps out of his chariot. He's scared to death. All of his men are being slaughtered, and he's looking for a place to hide. Now, he fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, wife of Heber, the same guy we was talking about a minute ago, the Kenite. And so he goes up to her tent, and because there was peace between King Jabin of Hazor and the clan of Heber, the Kenite. So he's thinking, okay, I've got a person here who's going to sit on my side. They're going to take care of me. And so he runs in. So Jael, the wife of Hazor, comes out to meet Sisera and says to him, "Turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me. Have no fear." So he turned aside and went into her tent, and she covered him with a rug. Then he said to her, "Please give me a little drink of water, for I am thirsty." So she opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. He said to her, "Stand at the entrance of the tent, and if anybody comes and asks you, 'Is anyone here?' say no." But Jael, I love this, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer. So she had this stake, and she took a hammer in her hand, and she went softly into him and drove the peg into his temple until it went all the way down into the ground. He was lying there fast asleep from weariness, and he died. Love the ending of that. And he died. Then as Barak came in pursuit of Sisera, Jael went out to meet him and said to him, "Come in, and I will show you the man you are seeking." So he went into her tent, and there was Sisera lying dead with a tent peg in his temple. And then verse 23 of Judges 4 says, "So on that day, God subdued King Jabin of Canaan before the Israelites. Then the hand of the Israelites bore harder and harder on King Jabin of Canaan until they destroyed King Jabin of Canaan." So we have this huge story here about how God is going to deliver, and through a judge, Deborah, the Israelites from their oppressor, the Canaanites. And so we have this huge story that, the backstory here is that Deborah's involved, and she goes and she lets the general know that Barak, that if he would go, God's going to deliver him to you. And he says, "I won't go unless you go. But if you'll go, then I'll go." And so she said, "I want you to know that," and she's a prophetess, remember this. She said, "I want you to know that God's going to deliver you from them, but it'll be by the hand of a woman." And so we have this story, and here's an interesting thing. So we have Jael. And Jael means mountain goat, or it means go to the mountains. And so we have the story, and I like that name for her. And she's in her tent. Her husband, the Kenite, is friendly with Canaan. And she's obviously an Israelite sympathizer. She sympathizes with the plight of the Israelites. And so even though it's her tent, the men had tents and the women had tents at that time. And in the history of Israel, the women are the ones, my understanding in ancient Israel here, that the women are the one that pitched the tent, while the men took care of the livestock and they took them off to feed and to graze, and they brought them back. And they were gone a great part of the year. And the women took care of the household. They took care of setting up the tents. They had all this tent in a community. And so her tent was up near her husband's tent, up near Canaan, and when this evil Sisera, this general that was well hated by Israel, and they had great fear of him. I mean, it's no joke to say that he had 900 chariots of iron. He was an oppressor of magnitude 10. I mean, he was oppressor level pro. And you couldn't fight against him. They didn't have chariots. And so you couldn't do anything with charioteers and the spears and everything that was involved with that. I mean, you take a nomadic people, and they've got tents, and they've got, the things that go along with that, spears and other things, and they've got these weapons of war, the Canaanites did. There was no chance, except God got involved. So I want you to see how God in this freed his people. He confused the army. He slaughtered the army, and then he used Jael to kill Sisera. And a lot of people have trouble with this, and they struggle with it. But I just want to take a look at her for a moment and what she did. I mean, she drove a tent stake through his head, all the way through his head, into the ground. But what did she do? How did she use this? Well, I heard a preacher preaching on this one time, and he said she used, first of all, the cultural understanding of nurturing. She ran out to him. He's assuming she's an ally, and she didn't reveal her hand. And she came in and said, "Come into my tent. Come into my tent." Now, she's an enemy spy. She's a double agent, if you will, because her husband was friends with the Canaanite king. And she was a sympathizer with the Israeli plight. And so she runs out. She says, "Come into my tent." So basically, she lured him into her web, so to speak. And as he came in, so she uses that nurturing expectation of this culture that this is a woman. She's no threat to me because I'm a mighty general. She's a friend. She's a wife of one of my friends, a sympathizer with the Canaanites. And I don't have anything to worry about. And so he goes in. He's exhausted from the battle. He's dismayed because he doesn't lose. 900 chariots, he doesn't lose. So he comes in, and she throws a rug over him and says, "Hide in here. I'll take care of you." And all the while, I don't know at what point she decided this is what she's going to do, but I want you to know that God had decided to deliver the Israelites from their oppressor. And this is how he did it. Now, a lot of us struggle with the fact that she hid him, she tricked him, she lied to him, she covered him up, and then she drove a stake through his head. So look what happens. He comes in, he's completely exhausted, he's thirsty, and he asks her, please, for some water. Well, she gives him some milk, and she opens a skin that has milk in it. So we're talking about probably warm milk. Well, anybody know what you do with warm milk? You have some warm milk, and you go nappy time. And so he asked for water, she gave him milk, and then she covered him back up. So he's protected, he's hidden, he's covered up, he's warm, he's exhausted from battle, and he goes to sleep. And she, while he's sleeping, sneaks up on him. He's covered with a rug, but she knows where his head is, and she's supposed to be standing guard, and she, he's asking her to lie for him. Now, a lot of people say, she's an Israelite woman, she's not going to lie. Well, I don't know if she would lie. I've met a lot of people that claim not to lie, but do anyway. And I don't know that the lie is as big a deal as maybe driving a stake through his head into the ground. But I believe that God delivered his people from an evil, wicked person. And so one of the struggles that people have is, does God do these kind of things? Does God kill people? Well, if you'll study the story of Sisera, you'll see that he's wicked. He's evil. He is oppressing Israel. He's been overly cruel to them and those kind of things. And so God's going to deliver them. And he uses her, Jael, to do this. She creeps up on him while he's asleep. Now remember what I said about the women of Israel would be the ones that would erect the tents. They were the ones that would take care of the homestead. So she's a stake driver from way back. And so she grabs a mallet or whatever they used in that day, and she grabs this tent peg, this stake, and while he's laying there, he's asleep. He's exhausted, he's weary, he's had some warm milk, he's wrapped up, he's snug as a bug in a rug, if you will. And so as he lay there, she creeps up on him, places that stake right at his temple. And then with a devastating blow of the hammer, she drives that stake into his head. And probably with another blow or two, she drives it all the way down into the ground. Wow. Now, is that an odd story? That is a strange story, but you see, God uses circumstances. So what can we say about Jael? Well, I think she used what she had. I think she was a servant of God, and I think that God used her to destroy the destroyer of Israel. And so I don't have any ethical or moral qualms with that whatsoever. Not only that, having studied the Old Testament in depth, it wasn't the first time God did something like this. And I believe that when Deborah prophesied that he's going to be delivered, that Barak is going to be delivered, Israel will be delivered, but Barak won't get the glory, a woman will. I think what we're looking at is, well, Deborah, the prophetess, who acts as a general. And then we see Jael, the wild mountain goat, who can't be tamed, who can't just obey because the patriarchy says, she's supposed to obey. She did what was right, and she got rid of Israel's oppressor. So we see she used a nurturing expectation. He came into her, and he trusted her. So the whole situation has been set up to where God's going to take care of the situation, and Sisera won't even know the difference. She used her knowledge of tent stakes. That's what she had. She didn't look for a sword. She didn't go out and get a spear. She didn't go out and get military men. She used what she had. The moment was opportune. And I believe she had a call from God, and she acted upon it in the moment with what she knew, nurturing, and what she had, a tent stake, and her experience with driving tent stakes. I mean, she was no small little dainty. Couldn't wield a hammer. Couldn't wield a stake. She was the perfect instrument in that moment that God used to deliver all the Israelites, her instead of the general Barak. Now think about that. She had a prophetic call to act, I believe. I think we see that in Deborah's proclamation that Barak would be delivered and Israel would be delivered by the hands of a woman. And we see that this happens. Well, what happens after that? Here's an interesting thing. There's what's called the Song of Deborah in chapter 5 of Judges. It says, then Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang on that day, saying, when locks are long in Israel, when the people offer themselves willingly, bless the Lord. Hear, O kings, give ear, O princes, to the Lord I will sing. I will make melody to the Lord, the God of Israel. Lord, when you sent out from Seir, when you marched from the region of Edom, and the earth trembled, and the heavens poured, and the clouds indeed poured water. The mountains quaked before the Lord, the one of Sinai, before the Lord, O God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, so she's in the song, caravans ceased and travelers kept to the byways. The peasantry prospered in Israel. They grew fat on plunder because you arose, Deborah, arose as a mother in Israel. When new gods were chosen, then war was in the gates. Was shield or spear to be seen among 40,000 in Israel? So they weren't a people of war, that they were oppressed by the Canaanites, and they didn't have shields and spears, and they didn't have these weapons of war like that. My heart goes out to the commanders of Israel who offer themselves willingly among the people. Bless the Lord. Tell of it, you who ride on white donkeys, who sit on rich carpets, and you who walk by the way, to the sound of the musicians at the watering places. They will repeat the triumphs of the Lord, the triumphs of his peasantry in Israel. Then down to the gates march the people of the Lord. Awake, awake, Deborah. Awake, awake. Utter a song. Arise, Barak. Lead away your captives, O son of Benoam. Then down marched the remnant of the noble. The people of the Lord marched down for him against the mighty. From Ephraim they set out into the valley, following you, Benjamin, and your kin. From Machir marched down the commanders. From Zebulun those who bear the martial staff. The chiefs of Issachar came with Deborah, and Issachar faithful to Barak. into the valley. They rushed out at his heels. Among the clans of Reuben there was great searching of heart. Why did you tarry among the sheepfolds to hear the piping for the flocks? Among the clans of Reuben there were great searchings of heart. Gilead stayed beyond the Jordan, and Dan, why did he abide with his ships? Asher sat still at the coast of the sea, settling down by his landing. Zebulun is a people that scorneth death. Naphtali too, on the heights of the field. The kings came and they fought. They fought the kings of Canaan at Taanach by the waters of Megiddo. They got no spoils or silver. The stars fought from heaven. From their courses they fought against Sisera. The torrent Kishon swept them away. The onrushing torrent from the torrent Kishon. March on, my soul, with might. Then loud beat the horses' hoofs with galloping, galloping of his steeds. Curse Meroz, says the angel of the Lord. Curse bitterly its inhabitants, because they did not come to the help of the Lord, to the help of the Lord against the mighty. Most blessed of women is Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, of tent-dwelling woman most blessed. He asked water, and she gave him milk. She brought him curds in a lordly bowl. She put her hand to the tent peg, and her right hand to the workman's mallet. She struck Sisera a blow. She crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. He sank. He fell. He lay still at her feet. At her feet he sank. He fell. Where he sank, there he fell dead. Out of the window she peered. The mother of Sisera gazed through the lattice. Where is his chariot so long in coming? Why tarry the hoofbeats of his chariot? Her wisest ladies make answer. Indeed, she answers the question herself. Are they not finding and dividing the spoil? A girl or two for every man. Spoil the dyed stuffs for Sisera. Spoil the dyed stuffs embroidered. 2 pieces of dyed work embroidered for the neck as a spoil. So perish all your enemies, O Lord. So may your friends be like the sun as it rises in its might. And the land had rest for 40 years. So think about this. We have a song that's recorded for thousands of years now about Jael and about how she did what she could. She took what she had and she acted accordingly, and she acted within her calling and within her might. And the Lord brought a great victory. And so I want you to understand today that through this weird story of a guy who gets a stake through the head, the Lord was blessed. And all these other tribes that did not come and help, they're sung about. And all the ones who did and come and marched, they're songs of glory. But the Lord is the one in this song who gets all the glory. And we have Deborah, a prophetess and a mother and a judge in Israel, who prophesied that Barak would win, but he would be delivered by the hand of a woman. Now you talk about an odd story. That is most definitely one. But I think we can see that God uses who he will, whoever's willing. And no matter how powerful Sisera seemed, God is more powerful. So no matter what you're facing today, no matter what your enemy looks like, no matter how strong or unovercomable they seem, our God is able. And by the hands, can you imagine? This general of this huge army was killed by the hand of a woman. That would be remembered through all of the clans. And that he, this great general, this man was killed by this woman. So I say to you women, keep on serving the Lord. Lay your hand to whatever he gives you to lay your hand to. Now I'm not a proponent of driving stakes through people's heads. That's not the Christian way under the new covenant. But I want you to understand that under the old covenant, God protected his people, and he protects his people today. I hope you've been blessed by this study as we go through this. I hope you look up this song in Judges chapter 5 and look at all the marvelous things that are said about this woman of the Lord, Jael, and how God used her. Well, I'm Pastor Rusty, and I'm going to talk to you later. Have a blessed evening.